Christ is risen. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to have a guest on today that I've been looking forward to having on for quite some time. Without further ado, let's say hello to Paul Sutliff. Hello, Paul.
Hi. I hope everything's going okay.
Everything's going wonderful. How are you doing today?
Enjoying the beautiful weather. It's definitely cooler than it was yesterday here.
Okay, good to hear. And you're up in the north central part of the country, so
yeah,
just
up in Rochester, New York.
Yeah,
beautiful
fantastic. Weather. Man, I'm a little envious. It was pretty toasty here today, but it was nice to get some sun, so that's always good. So yes, well, would you like to say a little about yourself? We have your bio in the description, but outside of that, what would you like to say a little to introduce yourself to our audience here?
I'm a Christian apologist, an educator, a writer, a researcher. Guess that's the way to describe it. I have a show called the Sutliffian Report, which we put out once every Thursday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. We are going through Sharia step by step. Some people will race through it when they do something on Sharia. We're going through it step by step, purposefully slow and purposely looking at every little nook and cranny, because I think that most Muslims actually know very little of the Quran and know a bit more of Sharia unknowingly than they do the Quran. And that's one of the things I'm running into, that Muslims generally don't know what they believe, but the little bit they know comes from the Sharia.
Yes, I definitely was one of those people and learned a lot through these circles and through you. Absolutely. Let me share with our audience your publications, which the description is in the link of how to access those. Yeah, really good stuff, and definitely a regular on your channel. The work that you've been doing with regards to the whole reliance of the traveler, the Sharia law, is completely thorough, and you just include so many different uh, samples, proofs, perspectives of every little aspect of it. How do you prepare for that?
that hours of that. I'm one of those people who like research, and I explain to students and others who ask this question. Uh, when you're a research writer, that means you like learning what you don't know, which means you're willing to go down what I call the dark hole. So when you
Mm,
find out something you don't know, you learn more about that something you don't know, which means you're going to find more about what you don't know. So you go down the hole a little deeper. Every time you learn a little bit more about what you don't know, you go a little farther down that hole. um, I went back to school recently. I'm now back at working on a master's in Christian apologetics. I have a bachelor's in religion and philosophy, a master's in education, uh, graduate certificate in intelligence analysis, and I've done all. I started out being studying to be a pastor, ended up becoming a teacher, and was traveling speaking on the dangers of civilization jihad. And one day somebody said to me, "Do you have a degree, any academic credentials to back up what
mm,
you're saying?" And I here I am in front of a crowd of about 200 people, and I'm said no. So when I got the graduate certificate, I stuck out my tongue to the world and said, "So there."
mm.
I got a 4.0 getting that, so and it wasn't easy. I was the
So,
oddball in that class.
yeah, and
It's
your
pretty good.
academic credentials is it's I think it's astounding, and I have to admit I envy you a bit because I went down a similar path and didn't quite accomplish as much as you did. From what I understand, are you now a doctoral candidate, or you're working on that?
Oh, I got to finish this. So I applied to go into a doctoral program because I did not pursue a master's in Christian theology or the area of, yeah, I would say Christianity, no, and not in biblical or anything. I didn't. I should say I didn't finish this is what I should say. I started one many years ago. It's the exact same program I'm doing now, and with a better school.
Mm.
So because I never finished, I never really counted it. I Yeah, I needed to go back and finish this first in order to get into the program.
Okay, let me, usually when I have guests on, I guess I'm so excited that I forgot my own usual protocol. But usually when I have a guest on, I like to tackle my own passion, which is mass media, especially Hollywood. As you saw through the intro, the little crazy intro that I threw together. Um, so, would you mind going down a list of favorites for us? Would you? I know it sounds like silly, but for me, yeah, it's intriguing. So I'm curious, do you have, well, I know you have probably a list of favorite books. Well, let's do that. Let's start there. Let's start with books. What are some of your favorites or some that you would even recommend?
Uh,
Outside of your own, of
um,
course. Yeah.
um, I do like David Galba's Muslim Mafia, and I think it's a must read. Um, Trying to think of what else I have over here right now.
Mm,
Um, Stephen Coughlin's Catastrophic Failure. The absolute must read is the Bible, and you can pick it up for free. You can go online. My favorite online source is actually the Blue Letter Bible. Um, you can download that as a free app for your phone too. I use that myself, so recommend it to everybody. Let's see. If you like allegories, I love John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. I think it's another
mm,
absolute must read. And then read his Christianas, which is the girl side of that. Christian is the young man, and you got Christiana. Read that book as well. Trying to think of what else I have. I my whole living room is full of books. And yeah, here's another one. The Generous Quran. It's an absolute must read.
Okay.
It is Usama Dakdok's translation of the Quran. It's an absolute must read, and I say that because every translation of the Quran you get is corrupted, except this one. And once you start looking at the translations of the Quran, you start. I mean, I didn't catch it. When I started doing radio shows. I was working for Blog Talk Radio, and I just got picked up. When I got picked up, it was on the same network that Usama worked on, and I had already been listening to them. I'd been interviewed by him and by others on that network. And probably did about 100 shows before they invited me to be a host there. But that's a ways back. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like that's a really cool story too. It sounds like you worked your way up, so to speak.
Yeah, it's kind of true.
Okay. So yeah, you definitely have it seems like an eclectic background. Let me stay on the topic of favorites here, because I mean there's so much I want to ask you, but so I'm gonna do my best to stay focused here. But so let's stick with the favorites. What about music? Would you like to talk about that? What's your favorite music?
I've a few favorites. Let me see. Pull up my Pandora. I have a couple I pick. I'm not. I like Christian music best. Christian contemporary and Christian. Let's see. Because I had Zach Williams. That's what it was. Zach Williams. I like his stuff. I like his more like you, which is less likely more like you, which is about being more like Jesus. I like that song in particular. Less like me, more like it is quite a statement. I mean, it's something we all should be fighting, is to be less like ourselves and more like Christ. One of my favorite groups used to be For Him. I had back in the 90s, I liked Petra Praise. I think there's a lot of different styles of music. I guess I like worship. One of my favorite things to do every week.
Okay. That's I was expecting you to say that you're a big fan of Ludacris, Move B, Get Out the Way, but that's not it, huh? That's not on the list.
I don't know.
All right. How about movies? Are you a movie watcher?
I was really into wasting my time watching videos at one point, but not a real big fan of movies, I guess, especially the ones put out these days. I don't consider a lot of them as having the value that they used to have. When I was younger, videos and comic books and things all had a few things in common, which was honor and, fighting for honor, fighting for love, fighting for family. Those were the things that would be the common themes, even in comic books and in movies. When you're talking about reasons for fighting, you're fighting off bullies, but usually you weren't fighting off to just the bully. You were fighting off because someone had bugged your family or something like that. But this is, it's a different world. And a lot of this stuff has to do with sex, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then some. Yeah. For me, I went from being a absolute movie buff and so on, comics and the list goes on, to just having to do it because I'm doing research on it. I'm dedicating my life to that. And it just being every time like a torture chamber experience, like I'm forcing myself to sit in a gulag for as much as I can handle it, and then escaping and taking breaks from it. So it's very difficult to watch movies these days, including now that I have that perspective, now that I'm going back to older movies, and knowing what I know, it's like, wow, it's a rude awakening. Um, but anyway,
It's a sad. I don't. I mean, the special effects are better, but the quality of the writing has really decreased.
yeah, to put it nicely. And there's a lot of talk about how AI is taking over that as well. Um,
If that
so,
that would explain the lack of improvement in writing.
or
uh,
may,
there are actual advertisements out there, and as I'm a professional writer, I get a lot of these advertisements. Come write for AI. Wait a minute, write for AI? So they're trying to recruit humans to create the AI material that's being sent out, which I find hilarious. Something to
mm,
think about. The questions you need to ask when you're hiring AI is AI doing this, or am I hiring someone to create something for AI?
yeah,
That's something you need to start asking nowadays.
yeah, and if they're out of Africa, no pun intended, then maybe they're getting paid a dollar and change per day. Thank you, UN, for the big boost, for big economic boost, a dollar change per day. That's coming from the United Nations global initiatives back, I think, 2011, 2013. That
Yeah.
was one of their goals. So anyway, it's the whole, it's that whole commercial. I can't remember what it was. It was like AT&T or something. Hello, Peggy. Thank you, Peggy. And it's like some guy from Albania, with with the woman's voice. Anyway, and yeah. So that's their AI. Some AI, some programming, along with people, paid nothing to make AI look better. It's quite comical, tragic but comical. At any rate, all right. So, what about TV shows?
I don't actually own a TV today. So what I do
Likewise.
have is I'll watch. I used to like Law and Order. Can't handle the Law. I think it was Law and Order SUV. I can't handle the sex crimes ones. I used to like Criminal Minds because of the way it would make you evaluate. It would make you think about how something's being done and trying to understand how something operates, what causes something to happen um, in the minds of the criminal. So I like that kind of thing, the stuff that makes you actually think about how things are happening. There's some old. I just don't haven't really watched anything new, so it's kind of hard to
Hmm.
say what's out there these days.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't press you for that at all. What about like in your youth? What was some of your favorites from back then? Like you mentioned comic books. Were you a comic book collector to some degree?
I I was an avid comic book collector,
Wow.
and
Okay.
I still have a good amount of them, which is
Wow.
crazy. Um, yeah, I think a good teacher actually should collect comic books from the 70s
Mm.
and encourage kids today to read those. And the reason I say that is I actually had a student, about 20 years ago, who didn't really want to read, but he liked comic books. So I was able to convince him to read using comic book characters. He knew who things like Spider-Man was and things like that, but had an interest. And once he realized he could read a Spider-Man comic book, and I offered him a couple, and all he had to do was read, and that was the deal. I
Okay.
think there's a lot of good stuff in the older comic books.
Yeah. And for those who are unfamiliar, Stanley actually used a lot of adult language, a lot of adult jargon, professional jargon in comic books. So as a young child, if you're reading that, you're learning advanced concepts, advanced scientific concepts, just by reading comic books. So he did that service. I will give him that much credit for sure.
Well, I was more of a DC guy, but I did like Spider-Man somewhat. I liked Superman. That was one of my
Mm.
favorites. Batman I liked, and Batman they ended up portraying him extremely dark as time went
Mm.
on. And during the 70s and 80s, he was never, from the kids' perspective, we never really saw him as a dark person.
Right.
And that was, we saw him as highly intelligent, the guy who could think deeper than most people. But I guess from the children's perspective, we never really saw him as dark. Never saw him as vengeful, because this is a guy who didn't really believe in violence. If you listen to what they would say about him, and it's kind of an interesting statement, because he wouldn't allow weapons, and he wouldn't allow, like we talk about, a knife or a gun. He wouldn't allow those things. But in the modern day Batman, they're using weapons, everything but a gun. And that's just, yeah, the only weapon Batman had back then was a batarang and maybe a knockout gas. That's it.
Yeah. And his fisticuffs.
Oh yeah, well, fisticuffs was something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so I actually met Frank Miller. I pitched my own comic book series to him. I think it was in 2017 or 2018, one of the two, and that was quite the experience. I was persistent, like he was. He was persistent and got his break being that way. So I figured I'd follow suit, and that would impress him. No, I got escorted out by security. That didn't work out the way I planned. So, but yeah, he's the one that made Batman: The Dark Knight. By the way, anyway, little geeky over there with my little factoids, but. And I did have a collection of my own, like including 1 through 100 of X-Men, 1 through 100 of Avengers, Spider-Man. Oh, not Spider-Man, but yeah, just all kinds, like early 60s, 70s stuff. It's just even up to 80s. And I gave that all away, bequeathed it to my nieces and nephews before I even passed away. So.
My earliest one was a Dale Evans and Roy Rogers comic book.
Wow.
That was from the 40s.
That was, yeah, golden age. Epic. Yeah. You still have that? No, I sound like a nerd, right?
Actually, I'm not sure. I don't think, I think the cover has actually torn off at this point, because I encourage my own kids to read them. So,
oh,
yeah.
Man. Oh, no. The fanboys are dying if they hear you say that. I know they're like pulling their hair out. Like, no.
I think I still think they're made to be read, not to be looked at behind a cover. I mean, I think that's the one horrible thing that has happened to comic books, which is truthful, is that many of them are destroyed from reading. Well, is that a horrible thing or is that a good thing? I want people to think about that. A book gets destroyed from being read over and over again. It's not a bad thing. Would you like your book that you wrote to be destroyed because somebody read it 100 times? Oh, I mean, yeah, well, maybe they should reprint it, is the next thing you're thinking about. Yeah, that's the direction we have to go.
Yeah, Darcy says Dale and Roy
were Christians. Dale Evans and Roy Rogers were married. They were Christians, and they were an incredible duo. And people don't realize that, but that was the way that was one of their ministries to people, was their shows.
Yeah, I don't want to sound too old, but how times have changed, huh? Back when not only it was okay to speak about God and even Jesus, not so much Jesus, but definitely God back in the day, to what's going on these days. So take us back on a nostalgic trip, if you don't mind. What was it like being little Paul Sutliff?
My mom and dad took us to church every week. My dad was a teacher, and I actually got the privilege of having him. I was the kid that was very skinny that would get beat up because I was the kid who was very skinny, and the available kid to get beat up. So I got transferred to another school where my father actually taught, and I had him as a teacher. So it was kind of cool to have my dad as a teacher. And here I am in 6th grade, and my father, he taught instrumental music, and he taught the band, and that meant you had to go to school early if you wanted to be in band. So I'd get a free ride to school, which was not bad, rather than walking or bicycling. the deal was if I got a ride, didn't mean I'd get a ride home, by the way.
Mm.
If I got a ride to school, I could get a ride to school. It was a pretty good deal. I'd set up the chairs, but the first day, set up all the chairs like he asked. I sat down. I was playing French horn back then, and my father got on the podium. Here I am, sixth grade, about 10 years old, and my dad stands on the podium, and I saw a smile that I'd never seen. I'm trying to figure out, how is it possible? Here I am, 10 years old, and Dad, I've never seen that smile on my father. He truly loved what he did as a teacher, and his love of teaching was so effective that all three of us became teachers. And the Bible says teaching is a gift given to families, and you will find teachers who have teachers who have teachers, and that's a normal thing. We all, when you get a bunch of teachers together, we sit there and laugh. Okay, is your child a teacher? Yep. I did not want to go into teaching. I went into working in retail. I went into working in restaurants. I did other things. I studied to be a pastor first. No, did everything else. And then every job I did get, I ended up being the trainer, the teacher. Finally decided I'd go get paid for doing that because every job I had didn't pay much, but I still was doing the teaching. So went back and got the master's and started teaching. As a kid, I grew up as in a nice neighborhood, suburban neighborhood. It was nice. Went to a church where I guess the people kind of expected the pastor to read the Bible, not necessarily they had to read it. And no one really told me you should be reading it. I think about that. It was kind of like we all grew up knowing who Jesus was, but there was no push to learn more than knowing, okay, he's God. All right. There was no concept of born again in the church I grew up in. Never heard of it, actually. And that kind of blew my mind that I'd never heard of it. I didn't hear about somebody being born again till I might have been 9th or 10th grade. And somewhere around there, I heard about it, and I still didn't understand it. And I had a friend who was born again, and he wasn't pushing it. We were just great friends. And he's the first one who introduced the concept of fun in Christianity to me.
Interesting.
There was such a thing as Christian rock groups. I'd never heard of such a thing. Christian bands. I never heard of them. I mean, I'd known who Kiss was. I'd known who Genesis was. I'd known who all these other groups were. I remember in the 80s, Joan Jett, the Black Hearts, I think it was, or I can't remember. I mean, all these groups, I'd heard of them, but never had heard of anything Christian groups. And he introduced them to me, got me involved in doing a few different things. And it was nice. I mean, as I was growing up, and I was involved with the youth group and got involved in church. My dad my parents were Christians. I would say that, without knowing, I would say I believe they were born again. I don't think there was a concept outside of Christianity that would have interfered with that. They truly loved God, and they'd give themselves. They worked everything they could. They'd give. To give an example, let's see. Well, my father was the church organist. He was a substitute church organist. When he would get paid, he would take that check and he would turn it back into the church, as he didn't.
Wow.
It was something that was part of how he would give back. And people don't necessarily understand that, but they would pay the church organist And there's things there. It was just, and I think it's between my sophomore and my junior year, I can't remember which one. I think it's my sophomore year I came to know Christ. What was different for me was I had made a choice. I was going to start hanging out with all the church group I was in. That youth group, they were all into the free sex movement and doing other things as soon as the youth group ended. And I heard about it, like, okay, let's go out in this place after church and we'll meet there. And you heard all these things, and I decided I was going to go join them after the church retreat for youth retreat, and just made the choice. I didn't say anything to anybody, and just knew that was going on. Everybody knew about it. Didn't mean it was a good thing. I'm saying from us youth, as everybody knew it. I don't know about the parents, but I went to that youth retreat and I sat down. This is at Camp Asbury down in it's in New York State. It's a Methodist camp. And sitting down, there's a picture of Jesus there. I just looked at it, and all of a sudden I wasn't there. I had this vision that I was walking on clouds in heaven.
Wow.
It was the most beautiful, beautiful, peaceful place I could even imagine. Happy. I mean, really excited to be there. And then I started to realize, this is so beautiful. In a few seconds later, I was not there. I don't have no idea how long that timelessness felt or actually took place. But when I opened my eyes and saw, or I shouldn't say open my eyes, when I was back on Earth, I don't know how else to describe it. I started to wonder if I was going to die, because I'd had a vision of heaven, and what kind of person gets those kind of things? Oh, I think, okay, somebody's going to die maybe, and it scared the crap out of me. I'm like, what, where am I ready to meet my maker? Is the question I started to have.
Right.
The answer was no. Okay, why am I not ready to make my maker? Again, no concept of being born again, which means we weren't really taught how sinful we were. We weren't really taught that man is sinful. We weren't really taught that first spiritual law about how evil man is and how stupid and sinful we are. All I knew was that I was. So I couldn't go to sleep. I was a crying mess, and I ended up that night making a commitment to Jesus. And I think the pastor, I think it was the person over that, I think was Ted Anderson, and I told everybody because I was a mess. They couldn't figure out what was going on. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I told him what happened, and I ended up going home, told my pastor, my parents, I told everybody. And my pastor was the only one who really seemed to believe me. And that was unique to have. He was the only one who really believed I said what I said I saw, I actually saw. And his name was Reverend Ernie Carrison. And the funny thing about that, it'll come to play later. There's a gentleman I am friends with today that we've known each other pretty well for at least 5 years now. Seems like, wow. I'm pushing 60 now. And I say I've known somebody now for about 5 years. That means we met around the time I was 55. Okay. There's some humor in this. And he actually went to church where I did. He's about 4 or 5 years younger than me. what had Pastor Carrison, and we met for the first time as adults about 50 years later. I think that's the
Wow.
world is very, very small.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up. I thought at that point, I thought, well, maybe God wanted me to become a pastor, so I went to school at Roberts Wesleyan to become and study to be a pastor. I got a bachelor's in religion and philosophy. Us kids who were studying to be pastors, we created our own little group. We called ourselves the Future Pastors of America, and we would we did things that were unique and I think pretty strong. And
Mm.
we when we saw something that we thought wasn't right, we let people know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day they were going to bring in a person. They were going to allow a debate in our chapel over abortion. They were going to allow somebody from Planned Parenthood to come in, and we're like, no, you're not going to allow this in a church setting. You want to hold it outside of a church setting, someplace, that's fine, but not in a church setting. You don't give them a platform in a church. And so we're like, yeah, we went, and chapel was required back then. You had to go twice a week. I think it was Monday and Wednesdays. And they actually took attendance when you came in. So, yeah. So you can think there was only 800 of us back then. I think that's early 80s. Loved the school. We used to call it the plastic bubble because no matter where you went on campus, someone would be willing to pray for you. In fact, someone might just walk up to you and say, God just told me. And they'd give you a word from God. Like, you'd be sitting there, or if you wanted someone to pray for you, you could just close your eyes and someone will come up and pray for you. It was, like I said, plastic bubble. We talked.
I got to ask, again, the media guy, is that from the John Travolta TV movie, Boy in a Plastic Bubble? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll put
That's
that
exactly
in the
where it
description.
comes from. Yeah.
All right.
It's exactly where it comes from. And that was a big movie in the 70s, and it impacted almost everybody. I don't think everybody understands that. And Plastic Bubble, you couldn't leave. In some ways, you didn't want to leave. And when you did, you were on your own. And a lot of us weren't ready for that, so it was like a training ground. That's how you can look at it. How to stand on your own 2 feet. For us guys, it was how to be a man. And that came to, it was a lot of little things we had to learn. How do you treat a woman was part of that. We had, there was a guy on our campus who got a phone call from one of the girls' dorms where his girlfriend was. And apparently the local boys were out peeping into girls' rooms. So he's like, okay, we got to go take care of our business. We all went out, went looking for them. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And we can't really physically harm these people. And we could beat the crap out of them is what we're thinking. And I still remember his reaction when we found him. He went up to the kid. He had a baseball bat. I think most of us did. We were ticked. You're looking at our girls. Okay. Walked up to the kid and says, I hope you weren't looking at my girlfriend in there. And the young man's shaking a little bit now. Is this gentleman who got a phone call was a big guy. No, it wasn't me. Well, he's with 5 other kids that don't belong at the school. And that's the exact description that was given. Yeah, it was them. They ended up so scared they ran away. Of course, we never had that problem. It's just, again, protecting what was yours and taking care of your own. That was it was a concept that we pretty much taught.
Yeah, and I mean, that's also a throwback. I know this is going to rub some people the wrong way, but it was the man's role to protect women. So you guys did what you were, let's say called to do, for lack of better expressions. I mean,
Yes, yes, and it was important. It was little things like that. It was very very important to do. Let's see. I left college. By the way, I'm the kid who flunked out of college.
no way. Didn't see that one coming.
I flunked out.
Wow.
I I have a learning disability, and my parents told me
I
that.
was going to
I
ask,
refused
as
to
soon as
admit
you
it.
said that, I said, learning disability. Yeah.
Yep,
Oh,
I refused to admit it. I went to, this is the thing that kills me. By this point in time, I had been working with special education type students, uh, kids who were, you know, severely learning disabled, and here I am, freshman, and I can't pass classes. But I had been working with this, so the kids who were seniors, I say kids now, my elders, these seniors were coming to me and asking me questions about what is this person like and what is that person like, and because I'd worked with these cases and I described, to detail. All the seniors were coming to me and about their advanced psych classes. I'm the freshman and
mm,
I'm giving them the answers, but I couldn't pass the intro to psych exam.
mm.
Not any one of them. I flunked out. And what I realized was I could not take notes in a classroom situation. So flunked out and had to find a new way to study. I ended up grabbing a textbook and highlighting it and putting everything I found that I highlighted in a steno pad in an outline format. That was, it was a gamble. Then I went to the class, and whatever the teacher said that I had written notes on, I just highlighted it, and every time that was what was on the test.
Cool.
Like, oh, I found a new cheat tool.
Nice.
So people started wanting my notes. I would
Oh,
sell them
no.
very cheaply. I would sell them very, very cheaply to just
Oh, no. Saw
people.
that coming.
Yeah. So, I graduated. I got my grades up to average. I had to go. I had to go to a community school to get college before I could get back in and prove that I could do this. And I got back in. I graduated with my sister, who's my little sister, who was 2 years behind me. So we
Yeah.
graduated the same year, the same week, which was, I think it might have been the same day. No more. I think, yeah, it was the same day. My parents ran down the street to Brockport, came back to Chila for my graduation. Like that was nice. And then, I ended up getting married, went to grad school, and all of a sudden I'm a 4.0 student.
Wow.
I ended up becoming an officer in the honor society, and I'm sitting here laughing my head off. I'm the kid who flunked out.
Wow.
I got into the honor society. That was funny enough. Then I'm one of the leaders and ended up being a counselor. Wait a minute. This is okay. I mean, yeah. So the kid who's the flunk out can become the leader of an honor society. As many
What?
times I think about that. But I look at it this way: you got to keep remembering God's not finished with you yet. So,
Mm,
and God don't make junk.
there's that.
So, yeah,
Well, I was going to puff you up again. Forgive me for doing this, but I just want to point out. I mean, one of the things I definitely admire about you, and I know I keep throwing this at you, but is just your discipline, your professionalism. It's just it's exemplary. And now what you're sharing with us is exactly that. It was your dedication, your commitment, and your discipline, and of course your faith. I don't want to put that aside. That I imagine got you through that very tough time. I mean, I've been through that myself so I can empathize with your plight, and I understand, you know, what it takes to fight back, to not be down on yourself and say, "Oh, I'm incompetent and I can't do this," and just give up, which many people with learning disabilities do. They just give up. But you didn't. You say, "You know what? One way or another, I'm gonna get this done," and you went the extra mile.
I think you have to figure out if you have a learning disability, you have to figure out what's the equalizer. And the unfortunate truth is, to really beat that, you kind of have to discover it for yourself, or you have to have someone kind of help you discover it. If you're not doing the discovering yourself, you'll find difficulties, because you probably won't accept the help you're being offered, which is what I was like.
Hmm.
Um, what made life hard for me is I ended up getting divorced, separated and then divorced, and you know, I am the first and only member in my direct line of family to get divorced, and I felt like I failed God and failed my family, and to this day, two of my children won't talk to me. So, um, not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm even close to it. There's things I definitely need to do better at. Um, I have really pretty good relationship with my youngest, which is nice, and we're gonna do something Father's Day, which I'm kind of excited about, or
Nice.
around Father's Day. So we're waiting. I'm waiting to hear back. It was 2 days. I asked him for one of two dates, and one of them's going to happen. I'm not sure which.
Happy
But
Father's Day, by the way.
no, thank you. Uh, I'm life as a parent is not always easy.
Mhm.
When you have a kid with special needs, which is what we did have, you try to do your best, and no matter, I think every parent will testify that your best is not always the best, and sometimes what you think is right is wrong,
Mhm.
and you don't learn that till later. Unfortunately, sometimes you just have to
Mhm.
do and learn the hard way. It's a horrible, horrible place to be. But when I ended up separating and moving out, I took about a year or two, I would say, closing myself off from the world.
Mhm.
I ended up being diagnosed with anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
And anxiety, they gave me one pill, and all of a sudden, my arm that was stuck to myself from anxiety, I could use it again. And depression, they gave me these nice little white pills that, I call it, they create the plastic smile. And if you're a person who has been on antidepressants, you know exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's not funny. It's just that label is
It
kind of
is
funny.
funny if you know that feeling. It's it's a horrible. It's funny because if you're diagnosed with depression and you're taking these things, you don't like the smile, but you need the smile,
Mm.
because the true cure to
Amen.
depression is
Preach
to
it.
smile. You have to smile. So you see me smile all the time, and it's my medicine.
Mm.
So I had taken a class in how to teach, um, um, using the brain and using the brain. It was all about brain research and how to teach using concepts of brain research. And one of the things that we covered was the endorphins that are released when you smile. And
Mhm.
for some reason, I was going through this period in my life where I couldn't remember to take my meds. Well, that was problematic. Uh, I mean, especially when you have depression, this is really not good. So I took a gamble and I said, "Okay, God, I'm I'm going to have to learn to smile. You're going to have to help me with this."
Mm.
So I remember starting that work week. It was the beginning of the school year, and I still remember walking in the door and telling myself, 5 seconds have gone by. I need to smile. A few minutes later, oh, I'm not smiling. Got to smile. So when you smile, you actually force yourself to smile a second or third time because smiling makes you want to smile. And as you continue to push yourself, I was fighting for seconds. I was fighting for minutes. I don't know how long it took me to get to 10 minutes or when I got to an hour. I just remember it was a constant fight. I
Mm.
have to keep reminding myself. And like I said, now you see me smile all the time because it's my medicine. And you know, it was a big fight. And today, there are symptoms that come with depression, like you're disorganized and you have difficulties doing some things. Well, my
Mm.
medicine works for one thing, the attitude, but the depression, I say craziness, there's other things that come with depression, like, like I said, being disorganized, being not necessarily being good at some things. But I'm not somebody that you would think would be depressed anymore. Why? Because God has blessed me and with the ability to smile, and
Mm.
he gets the credit. Nobody else does.
Amen.
Yeah. And, I tell people this: if you can learn to smile, yeah, you can get off those plastic pills, but don't just leave them. And it's one thing. I think the plastic smile is actually good for a lot of people because if you can't smile and you need that help, use it.
Mm.
It's I will never tell anybody not to. Um, Took me a few years to go back. I found a church that went out of its way to love, and that's my only way to describe that church.
Mm.
Went out of its way to love, and it's kind of. I walked in. The pastor wouldn't allow me to sit alone, and I was like, he knew I was coming in as a single guy, and it's like that's not how people should not be sitting alone in a church, and you shouldn't. When you think about that, and you're visiting, and you come in this particular church, you come in. There's like 4 or 5 people, greeting you. Then you run into the pastor. You come into the sanctuary. Okay, the usher is greeting you and saying, with a smile. So you've met about 10 people, close to 10 people by the time you get into the church, and they've all greeted you with a smile. And then the pastor will not. So somebody sat next to me and started a conversation, and I picked up on this. Not necessarily. I'm not everybody will probably pay attention to those things, but I do. Sat down and I'll say this: I've been at that church. It's got to be close to 15 years, and that initial time, uh, took me out of one of my dark, deep holes that I was in, and it's just to find someone who cares. I have, we talk about testimony, and one of the things you talk about highlights of your testimony. My highlights now are my friends. I have some incredible friends, and one of those I was telling you, which I think is really humorous, went to the same church as me when we were children. Um, I think that is so funny. We didn't live far from each other. Is the other point. I I could sit here and laugh about that. Uh, One, two. So we broke our church into small groups, and we meet on Wednesdays. So there's about 10 different groups that we get together, and their groups is smaller than 10, somewhere's in there. And the nice thing about this, so we're getting together and we're talking with each other. And the funny thing about the group that I'm in now, we have a new leader. one of the newer leaders in our church, and of the small groups, I should say. And I knew who all the other leaders were, and I picked this particular group because I didn't know what they were like. The husband and wife team, they were different. I knew everybody else. I had an idea of what they would say when they were leading, and I picked this group. And 3 of my other friends picked them for the same exact reason. So there's like 4 of us all together. We're all connected and different. We do things together. One of the things that we do, my friend Todd and I, we used to get together every day after Sunday after service, and we'd go out to eat afterwards. And one of the reasons why we started this was because what are we going to do? We're going to go home. We're going to look at the 4 walls of our places. And really, what are we going to do? Okay. Or we could go out and do something. But again, there's really no one there. So we decided, maybe we should start, inviting some others to come join us to do something. So we have a group that now meets after church, and it's usually just guys, and we have fellowship. and that those 3 friends I mentioned that are in that group, they come join us every just about every Sunday after church. And I'm picking on guys. Fellowship for guys is so important. If you're a single guy, get together with other single guys, have some great fun. One of the things I think that's interesting is how important that is for me. I'll say that. So we do this again once a week, but you got to connect. I talk with everybody at least once or twice a week, which is nice. If you want to know how I got into writing on the topic of Islam, it's because I joined a Patriot group back in a little bit more than around 15 years ago. Wow. About 17 or 18 years ago, maybe, 20 years ago, joined a Patriot group, and they had said to me, did you know there was, was it 15? I can't even remember how many years ago now.
Time flies, right?
Yeah. They said, I joined the group, and Helen, who was leading the group, pretty much, one of the leaders, she said to me, did you know Nazareth College, which is where I went for my master's, took $500,000 from a group called the International Institute of Islamic Thought.
Wow.
And I am a research writer at this point. In my area of education, and I was published in books in every Barnes and Noble as an editor and as a contributing author. And I'd taken my kids and shown them the books, and like, wow, Dad's got something in every. They're getting bored by the time the 3rd store we go to. Like, okay, Dad, your book's in here. Okay, we get it. No,
Nice.
But okay, to me that was important, that they would know that their dad could do something like that.
Yeah.
But the fact that I was well known even in grad school for knowing how to do research. And I credit that to the little bit of seminary I went to, where I learned Boolean language and shortcuts in doing research. And, there's little things you can do to, cut time down in doing research. All right. Because I like research, I subscribe to a lot of different news services to try and keep up on things. But this term, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, again, because I like research, I heard the name before. So I sat down and I did about an hour's worth of research. And I learned that IIIT, as they call themselves, International Institute of Islamic Thought, is part of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America.
Mm.
Oh, well, the Muslim Brotherhood's the parents of Al Qaeda. Oh, okay, wait a minute. 2001 has gone by already. We've got a problem here. If the
Yeah.
president, if the parents of Al Qaeda are giving money to the college I graduated from, we have a severe problem. This is a public relations nightmare.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm doing more research. This is the group that took a satellite phone battery pack to Osama bin Laden, and they used it in the bombings, coordinating the bombings of our embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. Nice, sweet, just the things we want, really. And you took money from these guys.
Yeah.
I wrote to the college, complained. I did this on. I got nothing back, no response.
Of course.
So I
What
went
are
on
they going to say?
yeah. So I went on the alumni forum on LinkedIn, and I got blacklisted.
Oh,
Look,
boy.
what? Okay, the dumbest thing you can do. I don't care what organization you are. You might want to check and see if the guy that you're thinking about blacklisting is a research writer, not a conspiracy theorist, a research writer, somebody who actually does research and backs up. I mean, he doesn't make crap up.
Mhm.
He has the documents to prove. I mean, that's what I did. I had cited every little thing.
Mhm.
Okay. The professor that was connected to all this was testifying on his CV, which is a resume at the college, that his doctoral advisor was someone who started the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States.
You're
And he was
kidding me.
doing this. Yeah. So he did it in such a way, he advised who, he bragged who his doctoral advisor was on his CV. And us non-Muslims wouldn't know that. But
Wow.
because, again, I love research, I went down that dark hole, and I'm trying to think that, I mean, I'm a professional educator at this point, and I just thought that was weird. So I started looking up
Mhm.
who he is. And I discovered he started the Muslims. He's one of the guys who started the Muslim Student Association here in the United States, which is the first organization of the Muslim Brotherhood here in the United States. Like looking at it, like, oh, this is this is dangerous. Okay, start looking up. Okay, after I got my blacklist, I'm talking with Ryan Morrow, and he was with the Clarion Project back then. And I'm like, okay, Ryan. He's like, well, Paul, you need to write a book. Like, okay, I wrote my first book. It was called Stealth Jihad Phase 2 Infiltrate American Colleges. Oh, okay. He writes me back after I share it with him. He says, you didn't write the book. I'm like, well, you should have wrote it about Triple IT. I'm like, no. I says, Ryan, I can't do that. I says, this guy, Jamal Barzinji, is dangerous. He's connected to, this is the thing, he was connected to Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda. I mean, just about every PIJ, every terrorist organization you could think of, he was connected to out of the DC area. I said, I can't do it without interviewing him. And frankly, he scares me too much. I said, Ryan, you have the military, you have that kind of a background. You should do it.
Right.
Like, okay, no, it's not. That's just not me. I'm not that kind of a guy that do that. Sitting here
Mhm.
laughing about it, scared, like, no, I couldn't do that. And, I'll call people to, I didn't have very many connections when I put that first book out. And then because I wrote that, all of a sudden I start getting phone calls. And, okay, can you be on this show? Can you be on that show? That book was maybe 50 pages. And then I'm on this show with Vito Esposito, now Corman, what would they call it? And then I was on a show with Cal Fritzy called Infidels Are Watching, and they're all asking me the same thing. When's the next book coming out?
Nice.
Like I didn't even plan for it.
Yeah. That's
So
awesome, though.
I sat down and I said, okay, I figured I'd do my research during the school year and do my writing during the summers.
Mhm.
right? That kind of worked out. I started that book and the second book, and I was trying to be academic when I'm writing it. I wanted to have an air of professionalism because as a professional educator, you don't want anything out that says, "Oh, you're a racist or you're a hater" or things like that. So I mean, I really
Mm.
worked hard to have that. And when I finished it the first time, when I finished, I should say, I finished the first chapter, I went back and read it. And I like, no, my message is to everyone. I had to go through that. I had to trash just about the entire piece I wrote already. And the
Wow.
reason was this. I was writing to people who were academics this time. Like, no, that's no good. Nobody's gonna. No, I don't want to write to academics. I want to write so everybody could read it.
Right.
Okay, so I trashed it all, and that was knowing your audience is part of being a good writer. And I realized that wasn't my audience. I threw that out in the garbage.
Wow.
Went back to the drawing papers and went back to the organizations that my organizational chart and how I was going to write and what I was going to write. All that stayed the same, and just rewrote it with the understanding that this was all going to be directed to anyone who could read at a sixth grade level. And I have that ability, right? Simply, that's one of the talents I have. So we did this, got it done. I got it done in it was about 2014 or 2015. I self-published it, and then I ended up going with another company, and they published it, and they never paid me a penny.
Interesting.
But yeah, that publisher went to jail.
Okay, good. I was going to ask. Good. I mean, it's
Yeah,
horrible that anyone goes in prison, but maybe
I don't have
blessed.
a problem with that person going to jail because they cheated a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was funny because the Oklahoma Attorney General contracted each of us, and we all said the same thing because I ended up talking to her. I had a lot of connections on LinkedIn, and I says, "I'll connect you. I'll find them for you." She's like, "What do you mean you'll find them?" I says, "Just let me make the connections on LinkedIn," and I did, and they all, I gave them her phone number, and she's like, she's wondering how I'm getting a hold of them. She's like, "You're all telling me the same thing. Do you realize that you are all telling me the same thing?" I was like, "What are we all telling you?" I says, "No, wait. I says, I'm gonna guess." Okay. She's like, "I wouldn't want to be at the end of targeted Christian prayers." She's like, "How did you know?" So these guys who cheated us all had left Oklahoma, run to the wilds of Canada, and the Mounties got their man. And they delivered him straight to the Oklahoma Attorney General.
Hoorah.
I thought it was funny because, yeah, the targeted Christian.
Well, then
Yeah.
there's that.
Yep. And
Oh, boy.
they got caught. They may or may not still be in jail. Yeah, I personally do. Yeah. We didn't get any of our money back, but we got our products back, which was the other thing we wanted. And I'm sure I don't know how much they ended up making. I mean, how much they ended up cheating everybody out of. And I know that my book was sold, you know, in Chinese. The Chinese had my copies of my book, and they're still selling it without my permission.
Oh,
Hundreds.
man. What's up with
Yeah.
that?
Oh, that's China. They steal anyways.
Wow.
China government have no problem stealing your possessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that over and over again, and that's one of the reasons I'm not too keen about ebooks.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I exactly same here. And forgive me for interjecting, but I've worked for the Chinese for years. And yes, that's all I'm going to say about that. Yes. All right.
they don't respect patents. They don't respect copyrights.
Good word.
And when people refuse to do those things, that it's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote that second book with the purpose of revealing there is no such thing called modern Islam. And the interesting part was when I started that book, I didn't know that I was going to go exactly there. And, as I started on the path of writing it, I was seeing these words like extremist. And someplace in the midst of my writing of that, this guy called Zuhdi Jasser, around 2001, he comes on the scene and he starts using this made up word he made up, Islamist. And
I was wondering where that comes from.
Zuhdi Jasser made that word up, and he's trying to pretend that Muslims can separate Islam from politics. Well, that's a made-up belief because, first of all, that's against their belief structure. And Alan Vito, who ended up hiring me to work with, back then we ended up calling it Global Patriot Radio when I ended up working for them. They had interviewed this guy, and during the interview, I hope that it's still in line. If you go to Blog Talk Radio, you look up Zuhdi Jasser's interviews, you might find this interview. This is a very powerful interview because it kind of reveals that Zuhdi doesn't necessarily believe what he was saying. It was like, I'd heard that some people said they didn't believe he did. And then you listen to that interview, which I was part of the chat room during that interview, and kind of shocked. It didn't make any sense.
I'm trying to pretend like I know how to spell the name, but it's not working for me.
Zuhdi, I think it's Zhudi Jasser. He's running for Congress in Arizona. Please do not vote for this idiot. He is he's part of a mosque that is part of the Muslim Brotherhood out there, and and it's affiliated with the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is Hamas in America. So please do not. Again, these are organizations that should not be allowed to legally exist in the United States. Again, when that has to be dealt with by the federal government, they have to say, look, if Hamas is illegal in the United States, you can't have a subsidiary organization. That would eliminate CARE, that would eliminate Students for Justice in Palestine, that would eliminate Americans for Justice in Palestine, and a whole other bunch of organizations that are related to them. Now, dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood, again, you'd have to consider this. Guess what? Hamas is a chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood. Oh, it says it in their charter. You can find it. You can go look for primary source documents, and you look it up, and you're going to find the Hamas charter and read it. It says it. It's pretty much word for word. They are a chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. And so now if you're looking at it that way, maybe we should ban the Muslim Brotherhood. And in the United States, they haven't committed a Muslim Brotherhood as an organization has declared war on the United States, but it has not committed what would be defined as a terrorist action. So in the United States, they can't be called terrorists. But what does it mean when you have an organization that's declared war on the United States? Now, what would happen if Congress said, oh, you've declared war on us? Let's just recognize that. Now we have a domestic enemy. Guess who gets enabled to work? The FBI, NSA, all these organizations start to investigate and possibly close these organizations as enemies of the U.S. government. Well, that would be a good move. But right now, they're not doing anything. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, are you scared? Have you ever been followed? And I was just telling you before the show, like, yeah, I've been followed. I've been chased one time. and it was by the U.S. government. And I say
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's
say this
just so ironic, sort of.
I say this because I had written an article that exposed the U.S. government was financing CARE, an organization in CARE in Florida that had illegally filed for a grant when they didn't qualify. I say illegally. They knew they didn't qualify. The qualifying requirements said you had to have, you could fill out this whole thing. You had to have proof that you had been threatened by a terrorist group or had reason to fear a terrorist threat.
Mm.
So this organization filed its paperwork, and I filed a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request. And the U.S. government sent me everything, even the police letter that they had filed.
Mm.
There was no threat. There was no potential threat. In fact, the police letter said, we've had no complaints. We've had no calls. wait a minute. They got, what was it, 20 grand for free from the federal government
Yeah.
to harden their target. Harden the target so they can put videos, they can make reinforced walls. I mean, we're talking that kind of stuff. And they had no threats made against them. This should make people think, whoa, what's the real thing going on here? CARE was advertising that. ISNA was advertising this. Whoa. And, I looked and I had written this book that The Civilization, Jihad, and the Myth of Modern Islam. And in there is a lady's name who was on this panel. And technically, I can't say she was on the panel or not on the panel. However, her job, there was somebody on that panel that worked in the department that she was, and this is under Obama. And Obama credited her with, if you had problems with your budget, you went to this person, and that's in the book. So if you buy the book, you can only get it in an ebook format right now. So it's pretty cheap. It'll make you laugh. I'll say that it will make you laugh when you figure out. If you find that, it's one of the last chapters. I have his presidential White House visitor logs, where I list a large amount of Muslim Brotherhood members who decided to spend almost daily visits with that president, who probably, I believe he's still president with Biden, being Obama. I mean, it's hard to believe a man with dementia is actually making choices.
Well,
I just don't see it.
Yeah, technically, I mean, well, or in all reality, maybe technically, but in all reality, how can he be? I mean, by law, isn't there some kind of, I mean, some people have posed like this. Isn't that like abuse of the elderly?
So here's my thing. Every single person who works in the White House, in the West Wing, every single Secret Service member who is aware of his mental status should be charged with elder abuse.
Yeah.
Jill and the children, the Biden children, should be charged with elder abuse and jailed. Now, Biden can go take his week, go to a nice vacation home for elderly people. I think that's where he should be. Do I think he's aware of what he's doing? Maybe 5%, 10%, maybe 20%. I mean, because that cognitive decline is just going down, down, down. But yeah, in fact, the funny thing is this week, the New York Post ran a huge article on it. And looking up stuff. Like this is one of the things with me. I try to only write about the things I can prove. My last book called Cancer, Civilization, Jihad. In 2016, I went to Europe on a fact-finding expedition on the Islamization of Europe. It was run by the Middle East Forum. Daniel Pipes led the event, and I'll say this: it was a life changer for me to go there. Actually, one of my bosses told me. I was talking to him about this trip. It's like, maybe I should go, and he's like, Paul, it's not you should go; it's you have to go, because you will regret it the rest of your life if you don't go.
Good call.
So before I left that day, I made arrangements to go. It was, probably the best advice I've gotten from a boss. And he actually had my book, my second book, on his desk, and the kids would come in and say, "Mr. Sutliff, he's got your book on his desk and he's reading. He's got it all marked up." Like,
Wow.
I didn't expect this in a school environment. Like, okay, like they go to another principal. He's got your book too.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I'd actually given out the books, and so it's not like they had to buy them. I want to let you know if it was something considered controversial, and so the kids came back and told me those things. But so I went on that trip, and we started in Paris. We met a lot of important people. One of the people running for president in France was currently running was one of the people we met. We met the French we met an intelligence group in France. We met their version of what I would consider the CIA. They were interesting. So before we got to that group, we went and met with the Interior Ministry of France. They have a group that's in charge of immigration. So the guy who was in charge of this group, guy in charge of immigration, sitting there giving us a speech, and he gives all in French, and we have somebody translating, and they have the translator for the English, and it was boring and bad. They let us ask questions at the end. And one of the things they said was, they have to do this, this, and this to become citizens. So I wait till later, and I said, okay, what if they don't do these things that you said? And this is the answer that kills me, and I still laugh about it today. I'm sure people remember this one, because I thought I was going to get in a lot of trouble after asking this. After my comment, after their answer, I should say. Their answer was, we can't deport. I was like, without thinking, I said, are you a country?
Right. Yeah.
That's a great I cannot figure out. Wow. I can't figure that answer out. Are you a country? You telling me you can't deport people who don't want to become citizens, but they just want to come in and have a free ride? Come on. Yeah. Why? And you're the head of this? Yeah. Guess what they did after that? It's time for you guys to go.
Nice. Very nice, as Borat would say. It's very nice. I mean, I don't know. Like, you nailed it, though. Why not? Why couldn't they? And this is coming from an immigrant people. Just put that in perspective.
Well, I mean, my family, I can say, has been in the States. They came on the second Mayflower. I was the family genealogist, so I got to go that far back. My family came in, 1622. My family came. So I can say my family's been here 402 years now.
Wow.
But to say that you can't deport someone who just decided to walk in and say, "Hey, I got a new place to live." No, I want to live on your welfare. No, something's wrong. No, kick them out. Then we went to France, Germany, and Sweden. France, Germany, and Sweden. We talked to the intelligence groups. They all had one thing in common, one common answer. I would ask this question: who do you think is behind? There was a massive migration of Muslims into their country in 2015, and it continued through 2016. And I asked this question: who do you think is behind this? And all three countries, intelligence groups gave the same answer: the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, to be honest, I did not expect that. I had no expectation of any particular answer. I just thought it'd be an interesting question. And each one gave the exact same response. My next question was, why do you believe that? They said, well, they're here receiving them, and they have they're planning for, they have plans before they even get, before they come in. They kind of know how many people to expect. You're like, oh, so they're getting communications. Like, that's the kind of thing you start to like, wait. Again, when you hear this in France, you hear this in Germany, you hear it in Sweden, you start to wonder what's really going on here. It's not. This is the thing that in the beginning of the book, my last book, it's on the Hijra. And the Hijra is the Arabic word for migration in the Quran. And this is one of the reasons why I recommend buying the Generous Quran. This last book, The Cancer Civilization, the first chapter is called The Hijra. It's a secret Islamic doctrine where you migrate before jihad. And jihad is the war against the non-Muslim. Anybody want to commit a war in your own home or in your own backyard? The answer is no. Go someplace else. When you look at one, are Muslims allowed to go to non-Muslim lands to live? And the answer is no. The original Hijras were to Medina. Okay. That's what Islamic doctrine, Islamic documents state. That's what it was for. Hadiths are on this. The Siras discuss this. Okay. You went there because you were Muslim and you were looking to get out. That was the reasoning. But in the Quran, it says first the Hijra, then jihad. I provide all those verses in this document. I provide quotes from fatwas that say, no, you can't go to non-Muslim countries. You're supposed to be going to, unless you're going to do this. What? Oh, unless you're going to what? Follow through with jihad. What's your purpose there? And then this word civilization jihad, let me explain where that comes from, and I haven't said that. So it's really, you have to understand this concept of war. There's something called a long war, and people have to, you will see something called a long war journal. And I think everybody needs to pay attention to that. The long war is a non-violent war. It's waged behind the scenes. CIA is always actively involved in this kind of thing. A long war. Don't have very many nice thoughts for that organization, by the way. But here, the Muslim Brotherhood had written a document called the Explanatory Memorandum. In that Explanatory Memorandum, they have a statement about their purpose, and they call it civilization jihad. Okay, that means you move in, you create your own society with the intention of destroying the country from within. It's almost word for word if you look it up. And I probably find it, but I'm just not sure where I put it just now.
Oh,
It's scary stuff. So it's their purposeful doctrine here in the United States. In Europe, they don't call it civilization jihad. They call it Islamization. So it's a different perspective, and people need to understand that we say civilization jihad here. The Europeans don't necessarily understand. It's the same thing, just a different terminology. Because if you had said civilization jihad, they might actually open their eyes and go, "What? Yeah, you're doing what? You came here to do what? Goodbye." I think they would wake up, but they've lost whole cities. They've lost whole towns. We're just beginning to lose that here. Texas, we just had a guy, Yasser Qadi, start talking about creating his own little city out there in Texas. Well, he purchased a little bit of land. I think it's 2,000 acres, and they're planning on building their own Islamic community where no non-Muslims are allowed to live. You start thinking about the legality of you can't sell a house unless, that violates so many laws. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see if they can actually do this. Yeah. And you're mentioning Project Mockingbird. Those are important things to read. Yes.
yeah. Jay Dyer talks about it a lot, and when I first heard him, oh my God, take off the tinfoil hat. But then I saw the source, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you can't get more factual than declassified documents.
Tucker Carlson talks about it. There's a lot of people who do. This is the important thing people have to understand. You have to have documents to prove what you're saying. And that's my last book, my second book. I actually hired a very, very liberal editor. And, I hired her not thinking about her political stand. But I was kind of gambling because of the state she's from, which is Washington, that she was probably liberal. And I wanted to hire someone who had an opposite point of view on purpose. Because one of my requests was in the editing, check my references. Make sure that they're accurate, So she would write back, "No one can prove anything you say in here is wrong." She would be mad. I'm sitting there like, and then she wrote back, "Oh my God, this one's in my neighborhood." Like I did. Okay, I did write about something in Washington. Okay, it was written about done writing about 2 or 3 months before I hired her, and she's like, yeah, that was enough. She was freaked out that everything I'd written was accurate, and that one of the events actually came from her neighborhood. Like I didn't pick her till months later, and I still laugh at that one. But you have to, only when you're going to do research and you're going to share what you know, you have to be able to prove things.
Yeah.
So
for everyone to see it, these are
books.
Oh, do you? Really cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and so I'm definitely. I mean, if you watch some of my streams, you probably wouldn't think so, but I'm definitely one who shies away from, quote unquote conspiracy theories. The cabal. I don't even know how to say cabal. I don't even know.
That's right.
But I've heard about cabal. Okay. Yeah, I've heard about it for years, and that's still something I haven't looked up, even though I've spent years and literally committing my life to research on mass media. I haven't looked up cabal because I shy away from that stuff. I've come to the same conclusions through judging them by the fruits, through the evidence in the movies themselves that's been habitual through decades. And so when I first, for me, it was Jay Dyer who introduced that to me. I was like, I felt vindicated. Like I can almost hear the angels saying, "Finally, someone who And so, yeah, it's not. I mean, it's just beyond words what's going on in the world. Long story short, but in our beloved America too, right? Yeah.
Some of these things you just sit there and go, it's one thing for me when I started looking at the Muslim Brotherhood, and I figure out how incredibly huge and real it is, and how in the United States, if you do research on this, when I first did my research, before I wrote the book, I was trying to take notes to learn more about what I was learning about, and I was using I was using I think it was Inspiration originally to take my notes, and
Mm.
it was interesting because you could you could put notes on pictures and things like that. So that made sense to me. Okay, so it was all this stuff interconnected, and I was just trying to figure out, and this person would be connected to that person, and then I read David Galbutz's book, The Muslim Mafia, still sketching out some of what I was doing, and he uses this term, incestuous relationships. And like light went on, like, oh, I knew what he was talking about. Like,
Oh
I'd
yeah.
never heard that term.
Yeah.
Okay. It makes a crap load of sense.
Mm.
And it sounds like a horrible terminology, but when you have a person who is a vice president over here, who is a president over here, and the secretary down here, and these three organizations share the same address.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff you see with the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States.
Forgive my silly moment here, but I can't help myself.
How you doing? I like you. I like sex. It's nice. I like to. Dinky. Sexy time.
I mean, come on, this is the stuff. And my question to you guys is, if you are the IRS and you see these kind of things, especially when it's in your neighborhood, like DC area, or not far. I mean, it's in Virginia we're talking about. Yeah, Herndon, Virginia. That's what I'm talking about. How can you not be aware of this stuff? Oh my gosh. I mean,
well,
and then you
I
have
mean,
presidents who actively go to these places.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
George
I mean,
W. being the first.
who?
George
Say that again?
W.
That's what I thought you
George
said.
W. Bush.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Wow, didn't know that one. I forgot what I was going to say now. Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people, they say, it's ignorance, it's stupidity, and all these things. To me, every time I hear that, it's like you make it excuses, people. They didn't come into power because they were dumb, first and foremost. And we're definitely not smarter than they are, maybe IQ wise and all that. But I would say they're in a position where they have access to a lot more information than we do. So I don't think stupidity has anything to do with their behaviors. Their behaviors are stupid, but they're not stupid.
Well, I look at it this way right now. Since the 1960s, they have been, since 1963 specifically, the Muslim Brotherhood has been active in the United States as an organization, as a legal organization. They're not called the Muslim Brotherhood. They are called their first legal organization is the Muslim Student Association. Now, since that organization has existed, that's where that 1963 date comes in. Since that has existed, things have pretty gone. If we state that as a date, you start looking at how did this get started? Well, you had college professors come in here. Where did those college professors come from? Oh, this is the surprise. See, they came over the border. What border? Southern border? Nope. They came from Canada. And why did they come into Canada? Because they weren't allowed to come to the United States. Oh, Wait. They couldn't come into the United States, but they went to Canada. Yeah, they went to Canada, got their citizenship, and then came here. Oh, and then they became professors because they knew through many experiments in their own countries, like Egypt, that if you get into the colleges, you can influence the young. And you know what's after that? You change the textbooks. Oh, start thinking. Because right now, textbooks in the United States are being changed. We used to say the Chinese invented calligraphy. You know what they say now? The Muslims invented calligraphy. Excuse me? The Muslims invented the astrolabe. What? And that's being put into textbooks today.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
So this
talk
is
about this?
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna
this
ask you
is
to talk about that.
yeah. I just the stalker. I have a fan, someone who idolizes me, evidently, just like the left idolizes Trump. They talk more about Trump than anyone else. So this guy loves to. I mean, whenever I go on channels or whatever he finds me, he loves to harass me and say these horrendous things about Hatun Tosh. I mean, I don't know how YouTube allows this.
I know Hatun. Yeah, I've met her and talked with her for a good while. She's someone that's come here to the United States, and we spent quite a good amount of time with her. And through Usama, who I work with, again, spent a good amount of time with her. She's an incredible woman. She's hopefully going to be coming back. I don't know about near future, but soon. She's a definitely unique character, and I think the Muslims are scared to death of her because this is a woman who left Islam for Christ, and she did the one thing they're all scared about. See, she changed the world by proving there are so many differences between one Quran and the other. She's dangerous to them, even because she started. Oh, I guess you could say that somebody else, maybe Jay, started it, but I'll tell you this: her work, we're talking about thousands and thousands of differences in Arabic between one Quran and the next. So, Mr. Khan, I think you're scared of Hatun. She's barely 5 feet tall, and you're so scared of her. I feel sorry for you.
And it's just crazy how, fear, just the insatiable malice towards the truth. I mean, you just basically just repeating their own scriptures or pointing out facts about their own religion, and they start flipping out. It's just, it's insane. It's beyond words.
Oh, you want to hear a good laugh? Now, this week, I was talking with a Muslim. I says, provide me an example of one of Muhammad's miracles from the Quran. And he starts it, he says, well, the moon split. I'm like, really? He says, are you sure? He says, well, yeah, there's evidence of, recent evidence of cracks on the moon. I says, you said split. That means they're in two. Did you say any place they went back together again? All right. Do you understand that if the moon fell apart in half, like you're saying about, what would happen? Like, he's like, he's totally oblivious to what I'm saying. So I says, apparently, I mean, these are brief interchanges. I says, your knowledge of this miracle means you have no understanding of the word gravity. It's sitting here laughing. Apparently, he does not know the moon's effects on the oceans.
Amongst other things.
If we actually had the moon split, what would happen? Oh, we'd have massive flooding like you wouldn't believe. So I'm sitting here laughing. Okay, sorry, I think you need to go back and take high school physics.
Amongst other things.
Oh
Manners.
my gosh. Yeah. Well, to sit there, I says, now you're He's like, well, there's nothing wrong with this. I said, okay, definitely need to go take a class in high school physics. There's no miracles given by Muhammad. The only miracle that I know that some people say actually is Muhammad's miracle is his night flight to Jerusalem. Really. So he's sleeping in bed with one of his wives, probably his child bride, and he has a dream. And he gets on a flying ass named Barak, and he goes all the way to this place called Jerusalem. And he gets off it, and he sees the Jewish temple. Wait, Muhammad lived during this time period. Guess what? It's not there. The Jewish temple. So Muhammad was having a dream. What was on that spot? A church. So again, Muhammad was having a dream. My question to you Muslims who believe this thing, can you know where somebody was in their dream? Really, your friend says he's on Cypress Street, or he's on this street, or he's on Mulberry Street. I'm picking a Dr. Seuss book for that one. We're on Mulberry Street.
I thought that sounded familiar.
Yeah. So where is Mulberry Street? Oh, it's your dream. You tell me. Okay, but the guy's dead. Now you're telling me you know where he is. Okay. Well, you get there, that temple's not there. Oh, this is where Muhammad ascended into heaven. Are you sure? Because he said it was there and it's not there. So I think he was in Fantasyland. Or he was just a freaky liar. Probably freaky because he liked little girls.
Yeah.
Amongst
other things. Anything that moved or even didn't move.
Oh, yeah, dead things too. Yes, dead things. Yeah. And that's disgusting. And this is one of the horrible truths about reading the hadiths. Yeah. I do suggest one of my favorite sites when you're doing research on Islam is Sunnah.com. I do like the fatwa sites that you can go to. Islam Answer Q&A. I like that. The Islamic sites are the best sites to prove Islam wrong.
No.
I love it. I love it. I mean, you can go to Quran X, and again, you can use that to prove Islam wrong. I thank Islam for showing us so many lies about Islam. So, Sunnah.com. The last show, Nicodemus was on with me. We were talking about one hadith, and the hadith lied about what was actually stated. And it lied so bad. When you have this much Arabic and you have this much English, something's up. You're like, wait a minute. I mean, you're looking at what's going on. You translate and you're sitting there laughing like, okay, they just made all this other crap up because they thought we were stupid. Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
Well, with some help, with a lot of help, actually, they got away with that, fooling a lot of us, including myself. It was actually an ex-Muslim who, I guess I was, being liberal, as they say, or just parroting mass media, essentially, about Islam, and he must have heard about it. And he showed me a translated version of the Quran into English. And he just, I don't know, I couldn't tell you which surah it was, but basically showed me destroy the infidels. And he said, Nick, whenever you come across a Muslim who's telling you how Islam's a religion of peace and all that, and he's, of course, emphatic about it, he's like, just ask him about this. Insist. Don't let them don't let them slither away like Sahih Bukhari 147, like slithering away like the serpent between two mosques at the, back into its hole. Insist that they answer, what does that mean? And every time, I had Muslim friends, and all of them were just trying to pull the wool over my eyes because all of them were aware of these things, but they're pretending not to be. They were denying it. And after I did what that ex-Muslim told me to do, to insist, they were all had that duper's delight and just kind of walked away. And that was pretty much the last I heard of them too, by the way. Every single time, come to think of it. So, it's just, it's the kind of stuff that just makes you just want to scrub and wash. Just car salesman slimy. I mean, forgive me for the
So this
pejoratives
is the
here.
thing I feel, I kind of had an opportunity where my daughter came to me and she was in high school and she says, I have a Muslim friend. And he says that Islam is not violent. And I quoted her this verse that we're talking about. It says, no, he says, he's lying to you. And, and it's like, if they say kill the infidel, they're talking about killing us. How can you say it's non-violent? And he just made up some excuses. And, when you got a teenage kid at home and they rather believe their friends than their dad, or, instead of reading the book for themselves, I still feel bad about not pursuing and really digging my teeth into things back then, which I should have. Maybe my relationship would be better with her now, but to prove that this guy was a liar, I didn't push it. And, I think that's one of the things we have to do is just push. I mean, look, on my show, I continually show the Islamic sources. You will see them constantly on the screen. I do that for one reason. I don't want people saying, oh, you're a liar. Oh, wait a minute, that's not what that says. You notice that when I post stuff, it usually has the Arabic and the English there. It's done for a reason, to prove that we're using Islamic sources, and that's exactly what it says. It's kind of sad. Oh, Khan cheat. You know what? Muhammad Dunaz Khan.
Oh, are you seeing those comments?
I just want to let you know that Hatun loves you, and she wants you to find Christ. And knowing Hatun, and I have friends who just have talked to her recently, that she wants you to find Christ. So I challenge you to do one thing, Mr. Imaginary Khan. You're not a ruler, by the way, so you can call yourself a Khan as much as you want. It's not going to make you very smart or strong. It might make you stupid. I don't know, because you're saying you're something that you're not. But my belief here is that, Mr. Imaginary Khan, that if you would do one thing, I challenge you to read chapter 12 and then answer 3 questions. 1, who are the brothers of Joseph? Read Surah 12, that's all I'm asking you. And then tell me, who are the brothers of Joseph? Then I want you to do another thing. I'm taking these cues from Usama Dakdak. Thank you. Plug for him. And I'm going to have you do one more thing. Why are Joseph's brothers mad at him? I want you to find it in the Quran. Okay, let's go more. I want you to find out who is the mommy of these 12 boys. Is there mommy or mommies? You find out from reading the Quran. Okay, find out. All right, let's try something else. I would love for you to tell me how old Joseph was when he was disappeared by his brothers. Oh, if you can't do that, you can't give me an age. Oh, I'll let you tell me about, from the language, about how old this boy is. All right, let's keep going. Who is the person? Who is the person who ends up buying? What group of people actually end up buying Joseph as a slave, and who is he sold to? What job did he have? I can go on and on. See, the Quran is con man language. It's built in generalities. Now, I dare you, I double dog dare you to pick up the book of Genesis and read it and find out a book that's not built on con man language, has details. If you're brave enough, Mr. Khan, which I doubt you are, you're just too cowardly, you would pick up the book of Genesis afterwards attempted to answer my questions, and you'll find all those answers there. So you're not as smart as a 9-year-old girl who could actually find these answers. I double dog dare you.
All right. So let's get back to thank you for that. That was wonderful. That's so much better than I can do. So God bless you. Thank you, Paul. And thank you everyone in the chat for for your outpour of love for Khan, even though he was being as vile as he possibly could. I think all of you are exemplary and a beacon of light for all of us. Thank you for that. All right. So I want to ask you a question about you might have already covered this, and forgive me if you have, but the Hijra before Jihad. So this is an article that you wrote that got some accolades. Did you want to, without giving what do you call it, spoilers? Without, would you like to touch on that a bit? Do we have time for that?
Oh, the Hijra before Jihad. It's a massive. I mean, people have to understand that one of the major things in Islam is that you have to be organized. You can't go unless you're organized. And this is something people really don't grasp. What am I talking about with organized? And this is one of the reasons why Islam doesn't work no matter what country it goes to. I say it doesn't work in the respect that they don't assimilate into the countries. They can't leave until they're organized into a point where when they get where they're going, they will not associate with others. They're only allowed to associate with other Muslims. This is a problem. And when you start looking at these organizations that they come in with, why are they so scared that they might have to do this? I mean, you will find the people that I cite, Ismail Faruqi is one of them. And by the way, Ismail Faruqi is the guy who came to the United States to help start the Muslim Student Association here. Oh, that was the doctoral advisor of the college professor at Nazareth. Yeah. He's cited in this book, my last book. I'll tell you this, people pick up my book, the last book, and they get mad when they're reading it. And you know what? I got mad writing that part because the part this is what makes me mad. And it should make everybody else mad. I'm writing about something your local State Department or Ministry of Interior or whatever you call that organization within your country that's supposed to deal with foreign governments, that's supposed to understand cultures. This is all knowledge they should have. And none of them practice it. If they did, they would say no to people who believe these things. You wouldn't let them in your country because they refuse to assimilate. My big thing to say about that is please, you can go to paulsutliff.blogspot.com and you can read a good amount of pieces on that. There's 2 articles I think I've at least written on there about that. You can find an article in there about the concept of refugees. When ISIS was activating in Iraq and Syria, and they were trying to expand beyond that, actively working with Turkey. I can go on and on about that one. But were they legally, the people who ran from there, who were Muslim, were they legally refugees? And the answer is no. Unless you are what? Female, number 1. Just a second.
Oh, bless your heart. Okay, yeah. So I've included some links for Paul's work in the chat for both his online work, which is awesome. I love it. Might be a little biased here, but seriously, if you have not checked it out, check it out. He's extremely thorough, which is wonderful. I mean, even though reading that stuff is like so dumb, you'll feel dumb after reading it. Paul is so thorough in his work, you do walk away more intelligent somehow. It's like a miracle. You're working a miracle, you don't even know it. Yeah.
The fight is to get the truth out. and that's the unfortunate truth. It's a fight,
Mm.
and the only way you can get it out is by other people sharing your work. It's like if you're listening, share this video out, share it to your social networks, share it out. I mean, this is what we should be doing. If you really believe, like Gospel of Jesus is saying here, share this important stuff out. Every show that you think has important information. This is supposed to be the age of information. We should be sharing what we know and sharing where we learn from, and that's the only thing that's going to work.
Amen. Also, let me throw in another one. I like to put this out there. And for those that are being censored unjustly, which is pretty much all the Christians, it's well past time we unite and hold them accountable. So whatever that looks like, it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of allowing us to speak and allowing us to, defend ourselves against this oncoming onslaught. So, what I'm proposing, of course, is a class action, but, also get busy with local governments and all these things, petitions, those that are, they're having a get together organized by Bob the Builder tomorrow, not tomorrow, Sunday, I think it's Sunday. Yeah, tomorrow, Sunday at 2:30 p.m. I'm a little anxious about that gathering, but at any rate, if you get involved any way you can. Above all else, forgive me, but I just got to say, keep your news. Pray unceasingly. Stay centered on Christ, beginning, middle, and end. Sorry, I had to get on the soapbox for a minute. Let's get back to your books on that note of spreading the word. Again, I think this is important. Let me just ask you this. So I know that your bestseller is the Proverbs book. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's the book that's. I mean, it's the book that got the devotional started, and I think it's humorous. Michael and I wrote this book together. Michael Williams and I wrote this book together as a project to get young boys to read the Bible on their own. And not having mommy and daddy do it for them. And we wrote our own personal stories. I'm a collector of old stories. I mean, from the 1800s and 1700s. I collect old books, old readers that have those kinds of things. And I share some of those stories in there. And that's why it's called A Book of Wisdom for Boys. By the way, there's nothing in there about girls. There's no mention of girls. We're talking about preteen boys we were writing for. So no mention of girls. Solves a lot of problems.
So I know this is going to sound like a silly question. I could probably guess, but I don't want to hate being wrong, so I'm not going to guess. But which one is this is a bad question, but I can't help it. Which one of your own books is your personal favorite?
As an educator, it would be I would say what social studies teachers need to know about Islam, but the one I think that should have the biggest impact is the cancer of civilization jihad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying, as a professional, anybody who's a professional, I don't care if you're a professional educator, professional human resources person, anything you can think of. If you are a professional in your field and you want to be treated like a professional as a reader, pick up The Cancer of Civilization Jihad. I think it'll make you angry. I'll be honest. I think it will, because you'll feel stupid when you read it. And it's not because I treat you that way.
Right.
It's because the information was there.
Right.
And that's how I felt.
Yeah.
When I was reading. I didn't feel angry. Well, I did when I started learning this stuff. Like, how come I didn't know? How come I didn't know? Well, the truth is, they don't want you to know.
Exactly.
And that's why I think that's my. If I have to look at any one of those, that's my best work. The devotionals are written for a different reason. The devotionals are written as what I call deep dive devotionals. they're written with the purpose of getting you into a deeper knowledge of Jesus and a deeper knowledge of the Bible, which will help you to live a Christian life. And I have about 10 more that will be put up eventually. I'm trying to deal with a problem, and it's taking me a while to get these out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as being an author goes, you know my plight. I'm still working on the same book that I started back in '09, I think it was.
It takes a while.
Yeah, especially if you're one of those quote unquote perfectionists. But yeah. So yeah, and I gotta say, I'm gonna pat my own back here. I was gonna guess the Cancer Civilization to Ohio was your favorite. So yeah. So again, I believe I don't want to keep you. I believe you. Yeah. So let me just say, what would be your closing thoughts? Well, let me ask.
If you my closing thoughts is don't take anything I say for granted. Go find out for your truth for yourself. I've recommended Islamic sources to prove Islam wrong, and that should be making people think, what? Why would he say that? Because Islam proves itself wrong. Go read the Quran. You think it claims to be a clear book. I double dog dare you to read the generous Quran. Oh, I keep saying that. That was a statement we used to make as kids here in the States. That was a common statement. If you really wanted someone to do it, you could dare someone. You could double dare them. Then you could double dog dare them. Okay. So this is as far as you could go on the dare scale back then. I think if you believe Islam is truthful, I have another thing I want you to read there, and I want you to pick up The Reliance of the Traveler. It's about $50. Read that.
Or free online. Forgive me for jumping in, but
Yeah,
those are the
yeah. I'll tell you what. If you contact me, I will send you a free copy.
cool.
And you can. It's disgusting. Do not leave that book out for your children to read. You could probably get away with. No, I wouldn't even leave the Quran out for your children to even pick up and look at. There's nothing in Islam that is not sexual in nature. So please, if you're picking up any Islamic books, even Islamic histories, oh, it's like reading rated X material sometimes. Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Harlequin has
I
nothing
kid you
on
not.
Muhammad.
I hired a secretary at one point to take my notes and books and put them into writing so I could use the material. I had to cover full pages because I hired a woman yeah. Closing thoughts. I'm going on and on.
No, it's hard not to when we're talking about this.
Pick up these Islamic sources. Reliance on the Traveler. Again, I don't consider it a wonderful translation. You can get your phone and use the Google Translate app. Take a picture of the Arabic and then compare it to what they say. Oh, guess what? The Google Translate app is free on your phone. So use it. Don't trust what people are telling you. Find this information out. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. And again, thank everyone in chat. And Khan, thank you for giving us that comic relief. God bless you too. I mean, I can't think enough. I know you have all these things going on. You're just amazing. Oh, I forgot to mention all the channels you're on. It's like, it's mind blowing. Like you're just all over the place. You're like you have I better not go there. I was going to say you have an omnipresence on the internet, but I shouldn't say that. But anyway,
we broadcast on 8 channels, and our target area is Indonesia. So that's why we're able to do that. I want to answer Khan's question. Real simple. Khan, can you put that question up he has?
Oh, the last one?
Yeah,
I was ignoring him. Sorry.
Okay. Khan, those are not churches. Those are social gathering places that wear the word church, and they are not churches. They don't use the Bible. These are places that masquerade as organizations that believe in Jesus. They're not churches. They're just social gathering places. They have no belief in the Bible. Now, you can call them a church. I know one church in my area, again, that it calls itself a church. When you're advertising a place for Muslims to come eat, when they say that you can't take the Christian and the Jew as a friend, what are you, stupid, church? What are you willing to bring the people in who say they're going to kill the infidels? Oh, so you brought them in so they can prepare to kill you? Again, right from the Quran. So these are these stupid, useful idiots who are not believers in Christ. You asked the question, that's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, and then even if you're a Quran only, it's there. Hoop, there it is. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So enough of that. Let's switch channels. I'd like to close out with a prayer. Do you feel inspired, or would you like me to just say the Lord's Prayer? Thank you.
Okay, Lord Jesus, Lord, we thank you for an opportunity to give you the glory, Lord. This is anything I've said, Lord, is nothing compared to how great you are, Lord. One of the great things we can do is bring you the sacrifice of praise, Lord. We need to give you the glory. Sacrifices are costly, Lord. You provide so much. We've seen people healed of cancer. We've seen people killed of many different things, Lord. I have seen so many things that you've done that are just considered miracles. And yes, miracles happen today. Lord, I ask, Lord, that you would call Khan's name, Lord, and you would call him as your own. That you would bring him to you, Lord Jesus, even at this moment. Lord, help him to have his eyes opened. Help him to leave the incredibly dangerous world of Islam to find you, and let him openly proclaim his love for you. In your name, Lord Jesus, amen.
Thank you, Paul. God bless you. All right.